Why are Democrats so against cutting wasteful government spending? Join me now is James Fishback, CEO of Azoria, and Steve Moore, host of More Money on WABC Radio and co-author of The Trump Economic Miracle with a guy named Art Laffer. More about that in a moment, but we thank you both for coming. James, you had a wonderful debate with the CNN host over the value of funding a Sesame Street in Iraq as a means of claiming to use soft power to help out people. But this was AID money. Here's the exchange, and he's sort of defending soft power, and then you come in. Roll it.
The coinage of the word soft power, you'd rather spend on that than bullets. But wait, you want to talk about
there was a terrorist attack in Iraq last month that killed 40 people. It's clearly not working. Soft power and Sesame Street are not working. If there are terrorists, we need to kill the terrorists. We don't need to fund Big Bird and Elmo.
Bird and Elmo aren't helping. It's really that simple. If you want to kill terrorists, you can't use soft power to do it, right?
That's exactly right, David. And the funny thing about that little debate we had on CNN was that moments later he argued that we have the money for Big Bird in Iraq, but we don't have the money for President Trump sending a tax refund check to hardworking Americans after DOJ has exposed the waste, fraud, and abuse. It's time to pass the DOJ dividend plan. I'm proud that President Trump and Elon support it.
I agree. I got to say, Steve, the whole what we've seen with DOJ is illustrative of another point, a big difference between the Biden administration and this one. And Apple's announcement today that they were planning to invest $500 billion, not with any subsidies from the U.S. government, just incentives, tax incentives and regulatory incentives to put private capital at risk, not put the taxpayer at risk, like, by the way, we did with the CHIPS Act, the $280 billion CHIPS Act, which not only cost a lot of money, but it didn't really help. You think of what happened to Intel. After Intel, which was one of the largest recipients of that money, I think they got over $7 billion in funds and guaranteed loans, they went right down. They went down so far, they lost their spot on the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Well, yeah, David, corporate welfare never works. And, if you want to, my kind of Moore's theorem is that if you want to destroy an industry, subsidize it with government funds. And we should have learned that by now with the wind and solar industry. I mean, we put over the last 30 years, over $1 trillion into it, and it's nowhere. It hasn't advanced at all. And you're so right that the whole approach that Donald Trump has brought to the White House, or I should say brought back to the White House, is let private capital markets do it. We are the richest and most powerful economy in the world because we have these amazingly strong capital markets that direct capital to the highest, best usage. Government politicians are really bad at that, David. They can't pick winners or losers. Well, they do. They pick losers over and over again. So I love the Apple story. Think about how many jobs are going to be created by that and not costing the taxpayer one penny.
Absolutely. And not only up front, but very often there's a back cost of this government-funded welfare, which is to corporations, which is that the companies go bankrupt and they need a bailout by the taxpayer. So not only is the taxpayer in on the front end, they have to get in on the back end to bail out these companies. And James, the other point is that they really do more damage than good, a lot of these companies. And you mentioned, of course, the running cartoons in Iraq doesn't do anything to get rid of the terrorists. But more than that, sometimes we're actually giving advice that sends other economies and other people, makes certain people filthy rich. A lot of those foreign leaders that are taking the AID money and putting it in their pockets, not to mention the people here like AID administrators and stuff who may be lining their pockets as well. It's a big negative when the government gets that much involved.
That's exactly right, David. That's exactly right. Think about it. Our roads and bridges in America are crumbling. We have seniors and veterans who are being denied health care, all while at the same time we're funding a transgender opera in Colombia and a DEI musical in Burma. It's pathetic. What President Trump has exposed with DOJ over the past month is just the beginning, and that's why the DOJ dividend really calls for restitution. Americans sent their money to Washington, D.C. to be spent in America, not to be spent in Fallujah or in Bogota. And so restitution is overdue, and that's what this plan calls for.
So Can
Steve,
I just add one thing
go ahead,
David? which is that, you guys aren't, well, you're not in Washington, you're in New York, but people are running around the city like their hair is on fire because Donald Trump and Elon Musk are saying, you have to tell your superior officer, what you did this week. Did you tell us 5 things you did this week to help? And, the fact that they're forcing people to go back to work, to be on the job. The federal employees are indignant about this. And there's an attitude that there's some kind of special class of people
that's
that
what
don't
happens.
have to live by the rules of the rest of us.
Bureaucracies have ended up this way going back centuries, going back to the French Republic. But, Steve, it leaves me to the question of whether we can get rid of some of these whole bureaucracies. I've just put down 4: Department of Education, Commerce Department, HUD, Housing and Urban Development. That hasn't worked out so well. EPA, I mean, we see from Lee Zeldin that $20 billion slush fund that was going to cronies that were still in the administration, setting up a little savings bank for them on the side when they leave office. I mean, can we get rid of entire agencies? I know that's what the president has in the back of his mind.
Well, we've tried to do that for so long, but I'll give you one perfect example of something Trump favors that makes so much common sense. We spend about $100 billion, not $100 million, $100 billion a year on the Department of Education. How about if we just gave that money to parents, low-income parents, to choose the best schools for their kids? I mean, you would help millions of parents, and you could get rid of a whole bureaucracy. Why do we need these middlemen in Washington to do it? Having a big bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. doesn't help anybody in Toledo, Ohio in a crappy school.
James, you only got about 20 seconds, but the good thing that's been happening now, those curtains have been pulled back. People can't unsee what they're beginning to see, and they're going to see a lot more. So maybe there will be enough evidence so we can get rid of the Department of Ed and other agencies that have made things worse, not better.
That's exactly right. President Trump won a historic victory in November on the basis of major government reform. And boy, is he delivering. The American people are proud, whether you're in Toledo or East Palestine or East Baltimore. It's time to defund these agencies and send the power back to the states and her people.
Steve Moore, James Fishback, great to see you, gentlemen.